A franchise that I would love to see a continuation of is Prototype. I absolutely loved Prototype 1, guys. I thought it was incredibly innovative and ahead of its time. It reminded me a lot of the Infamous franchise, and I have been clamoring for a Prototype 3 and been pounding the table saying I want to see a Prototype 3 come out. And I want to talk about what happened here to this franchise and could we ever see it, continue in the future. Let's get into it. So guys, in an article that was posted by Shubhankar Pariyat of Gaming Bolt, developed by Radical Entertainment and inspired by the studio's rollicking 2005 romp, The Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction, Prototype was a superhero game that attempted to deliver a power fantasy to its players like very few other games had. For the most part, it did that quite successfully, and sure enough, was met with solid critical and commercial success. That in turn led to a sequel, which was also received well by the majority of its players. And yet, even with its fascinating premise, its bombastic gameplay, and decent initial success, the franchise ended up not only dying a quick death, but even reducing developer Radical Entertainment to a shell of its former self. So what happened here? Well, the first thing for me, guys, is that I feel that the franchise, I thought that it was a massive step in the wrong direction with the second game because they moved away from Alex Mercer, our main character in the first game. I just felt that they needed to continue his story, at least for a few games, and they moved away from him so quickly. I remember when the promos were coming out and they were releasing posters for, Prototype 2, not seeing Alex Mercer there did not make a lot of sense to me. Moving on to another character is always fine, but you got to build the franchise first before you move on. You think of Gears of War. Gears of War had 3 games with Marcus Phoenix as the main character. Then when Gears of War 4 came out, they transitioned to JD Phoenix, who is Marcus Phoenix's son. So it kind of made sense. He's like passing the torch on to his son. And then I felt like they didn't stick with JD very long. They moved over to Kate Diaz. And so I just feel that even games like that, they're moving on too quickly from their main characters. And so they did this so quickly with Prototype, and that's where I think really met its demise in a massive way. Radical Entertainment Activision launched Prototype 2 in April 2012, nearly 3 years after the launch of the first game. And while it lacked the novelty factor of the original game, it was another solid superhero game. Combat had been improved to become more brutal, offering even more options with abilities and movement. But though the combination of seamless traversal and brawling blended together in great ways once more, Prototype 2's nature as an iterative sequel worked against it to some extent. Its story, which saw you playing as James Heller and turned former protagonist Alex Mercer into a villain, was widely criticized, while on the gameplay front, with the novelty of the first game no longer a factor, the sequel was on the receiving end of more criticism for being too shallow and as such too repetitive. And I agree with this. I think it was, a little bit repetitive for sure, that being the second game. And like I said, moving away from Alex Mercer and to James Heller, not saying that James Heller is a terrible character, because I think he's a fine character, but I would have much rather played as him, later on in the franchise than in the second game. I thought Alex Mercer was just getting started, reminded me of a character like from Assassin's Creed or something, and I just would have loved to see him continue his story before being turned into a villain. The arcadey fun and bombastic action it was offered was of course appealing to a large chunk of the player base, but Prototype 2 failed to generate the buzz that its predecessor had. Initial sales were solid, with the game outselling some of the biggest games on the market for a couple of months after the launch, but that quickly fizzles out. Not long afterward, Activision announced that the sizable investments it had made in the development and marketing of Prototype 2 had not been justified the way they had hoped. The game was deemed a commercial failure, and between 2010 and 2012, Radical Entertainment suffered significant layoffs. By the time those layoffs were done, Radical had been, radically altered. It was reduced to a support studio, though even that description is more than a little charitable. Since the launch of Prototype 2 a decade ago, the only thing Radical Entertainment has been credited with is providing some assistance on the original Destiny's development. That doesn't mean that that's all the work the studio has done, but any other work has been so minuscule that Activision hasn't even bothered to mention it. In fact, it wouldn't be surprising if a large number of people out there didn't even know that Radical was even a thing anymore. And this is a real bummer, guys, because I think Radical, they made something really special here with Prototype. I just didn't like the direction they went with the second game, but I don't think that that means that Radical should no longer be working on games. I think that they have a lot of talented people over there, And the fact that, Activision is really almost holding this company back in a major way is such a disservice to the creators over at Radical Entertainment. Of course, as with most other Activision studios and properties, there is a glimmer of hope for both Prototype and its developer thanks to Microsoft. Xbox is in the process of acquiring Activision Blizzard, with the deal set to be finalized sometime before July 2023. And Radical Entertainment was specifically named in the list of Activision studios that Microsoft would be absorbing once Radical has become a first-party Xbox developer and Prototype a first-party Xbox franchise. Might we see the IP getting a revival? That's certainly the hope, even though right now it's based on little more than wishful thinking. Given Microsoft's Game Pass-centric strategy, it wouldn't be surprising to see a number of franchises getting another shot at success, and Game Pass might even make it possible for many of them to attract a much larger audience than perhaps they would have had under ordinary circumstances. Hopefully, Microsoft will see the value in Prototype, because as those who've played any of the two games will tell you, there's a lot of potential here. With a AAA budget and proper backing by a major publisher, the IP could become a big name in the industry once again. We sure hope it does, because right now, there's little doubt in anyone's mind that Activision has let it go to waste. 100% agree with that. I think Activision has absolutely just kind of let this company and this IP go to the wayside. And I feel that maybe, just maybe, Xbox is going to bring this, franchise back to the fray. What would be awesome, guys, in a perfect world, I'd love to see Xbox greenlight with Radical Entertainment a remake of Prototype 1. See what everyone thinks of that. Comes to Game Pass, things of that nature. I think a remake would do awesome, by the way. Updated graphics and things of that nature. And then that could definitely greenlight a Prototype 3. I don't think that they would just all of the resource and development for a Prototype 3 up front. I think they would make a remake first, see what kind of reception they get, and then make a Prototype 3. But let me know, guys, what do you all think happened here to Prototype? Do you think we'll ever get a Prototype 3 in the future? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And for more Prototype 3 content and videos, keep it here with zrotv.